welcome to Beyond the Ballroom, where event careers take center stage. I'm your host, 𝗄𝗵𝘁. I'm the co-founder of Beyond the Ballroom, and I am so excited that you decided to spend your afternoon with us. Thank you, appreciate you. If this is your first time joining us, welcome, of course. We love everyone. Beyond the Ballroom is a monthly series built to shine a light on those career journeys within the events world. Each webisode, we bring you real conversations with leaders across different corners of the industry, from tech to weddings to festivals, conferences, all with the goal of helping you grow and connect and find your place. Today's webisode is the spotlight on the show behind the show. We're pulling back that curtain on the festivals, the red carpets, and all those amazing shows that you know and love and probably just finished coming back from. And so you get to meet the people who make them happen today on today's panel with the full powerhouse of professionals across music festivals, award shows, and experiential activations and more. So we'll have a panel discussion followed by the optional networking afterwards. And I definitely encourage you to stay for that because the connections are always real and always very generous. So before we move along, let's get to meeting our wonderful panelists, okay? They're gonna introduce themselves, their current title, their company, and let's say one unforgettable live event or moment that was either chaotic or magical to you. Let's start with Fareed.
Thanks, Damina. And hi, everyone. I'm excited to be a part of this panel and excited for all of you to be pursuing careers and your interest in the event space. It's been something that's been really valuable and add a great sense of purpose to my life. So I'm happy to be a part of this. My name is Fareed. I am the founder and owner of a company called Barnstorm. We started this company in 2021, post-pandemic, and we focus on connecting people like yourselves with different opportunities, mostly in the music festival space. We work on about 20 to 30 different festivals throughout the year. And we have about 15,000 people that are currently in our network, people interested in working on events, and we connect those people with those different opportunities on festivals like Lollapalooza and Austin City Limits, and in New York, GovBall. Prior to my work with Barnstorm, I worked with a company called 𝘄C_𝗿𝗄𝗋, based out of Austin, Texas. I oversaw guest services, ADA accessibility, sustainability, and community outreach initiatives. And prior to working with 𝘄C_𝗿𝗄𝗋, I worked for ESPN on the X Games platform for nearly a decade. And before that, I was with Alaska Mountain Guides doing something different but somewhat related with travel tourism. And my first kind of event job was with Angels Baseball as an intern. I'm currently living in Taos, New Mexico. I'm married. My wife, Amy, is with me, and we have a dog and 3 cats, and we're working on building a sustainable venue in Ojo Caliente. I grew up in Los Angeles. I went to Long Beach for my master's in sport management and Loyola Marymount University in LA for my undergrad. As far as a unique experience, I just got off a chaotic event at Bonnaroo, and that's pretty memorable for me right now.
Listen, I completely understand. Thank you for sharing with us. Jen, how about you? Can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Jen Caruso. I own and operate my business, Caruso Presents. I've been in the event space for about 15 years. I started off in food and wine festivals, eventually graduated into music festivals where I met Fareed and some other great folks along the way, and then have now moved into this experiential space. I work with a lot of different clients, everybody from Amazon to Lexus to JP Morgan. Within larger event, we create smaller experiences for guests and clients. Man, I've been doing this for so long, and it's as a freelancer, and it's such a wild ride, but it's really invigorating and fun to be a part of all of this. And it's ever changing. And yeah, a recent chaotic experience. There's a lot of good experiences, but the chaotic ones really stick out the most. I was recently building an activation, and it was a huge wine wall of empty wine bottles that spelled out a brand, and the wine wall fell an hour before doors, and all the wine bottles broke. So we had to pivot and come up with a new plan. And we still opened doors, and it still worked.
That sounds like it was so fun.
It was something.
I don't know if we have any friends, people in here, but when you said pivot, I'm pivot. Okay. Okay,
Yep.
Carmen, please.
Hello, my name is Carmen Jones. I am happy to return to do another for Beyond the Ballroom, so I'm super excited. My background's like Jen, I've been in it for almost 30 years in the event world. I'm currently the president and founder of Carmen Jones Consulting, so I work with a lot of brands and a lot of events across the spectrum, from planning to execution. I started in the wine and spirits business back in the 90s, which I think for a lot of us, because the event world really wasn't a thing back then. So we just passed around drink coupons, and then it ended up being something a little bit more than that, and then expanded. I started in the Maryland, DC area, actually, where I went to college, and then I relocated back up to New York, where I've been now over 25 years. Gosh. And this is across the boards. My heart's in sports. I've worked on a lot of different sports franchises, from NASCAR, NBA All-Star, MLS. I've worked with venues, facilities. I've even done Carnival Cruise Lines events, which we'll never do those again. That's a scratch. So just quite broad. I've worked in a lot of different industries: technology, renewable energies, wine and spirits, CPG, you name it. And I could go on for hours. Unique experiences. Funny when you said it, what popped in my head wasn't something recent. It was when I had to work on Burning Man. Another event I will never do again. It's not built for people who like to breathe. It's super, super hot out there. But I was working for a company, and our job was tasked to implement the Wi-Fi connectivity at Burning Man, because it didn't have any prior to. All I can say is I couldn't figure out how to get out there fast enough once our portion of that event was complete, because it was literally like Mad Max.
From Burning Man to Running Man, I get it. Completely get it. Oh my goodness. I find it so crazy that many of you didn't even start out like in event production, but your paths are this industry and how it can pull from all different directions, you know? And it's actually very amazing, because it's like, dang, to hear about things that you all went into and went through, and you're like, yeah, we're not doing that again, but I do like you know? So let's keep hearing more about you all. Jitter, we especially really love to hear about your story. Can you share like maybe your origin story? How'd you first get into it? What all do you do? Any magical moments here?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so happy to connect with all the other panelists and for you who are attending. So I'm 𝘄ci𝗿𝗿𝗍𝗍. I'm the VP of Events and Production Design at 𝘃𝗃𝗍𝗿 Productions. I've always been on the brand side. I started out in New York working at Dow Jones, and Carmen, I'm from Maryland too. I went to College Park, so I think we have a we have a
University.
There we go. Let's go, Terps. But yeah, I moved to New York, and I kind of knew from the start that I wanted to do events. I just didn't know how I was going to do it or what jobs were out there to do it. And just pure luck, I landed at Dow Jones and the Wall Street Journal. That was my first introduction to the events world. Was the only events person on the marketing team. There's a lot of baptism by fire there, kind of figuring things out as I went along. I did a lot of Dow Jones brand side events and also private events for Rupert Murdoch at the time. And then I moved on to Discovery. I worked across their portfolio doing brand activations and VIP experiences for all of the brands under Discovery at the time. So that's like the TLCs, the Discovery channels, Animal Planets, et cetera. It was a really great way to learn how to kind of be the internal agency at a company that has multiple brands and pivoting to a lot of different types of experiences. And then I went to Univision, which I was there for several years, producing their upfronts and hosting their VIP client experiences across their tentpoles. And I've landed now at 𝘃𝗃𝗿𝗃, and I'm so excited to have been here now for a little over a year and a half. I am responsible for all ancillary events across DCP's tentpoles. So the Golden Globes, Billboard Music Awards, the AMAs, which we just completed, New Year's Rockin' Eve, and a couple others. But a chaotic, definitely top of mind right now because I just got off of the AMAs in Las Vegas. So, you know, people tend to, especially talent and their entourages, tend to not read everything that we send them. And one of the most chaotic things that happened on the ground, we had several talent walk through the main attendee doors, the guest doors, as opposed to going through the back entrance where we could kind of gather them and to bring them in the other way. So definitely a chaotic moment where I had to stretch my 2-person team to gather a lot of people and kind of do crowd control at the same time. So yeah, it's a moment that we'll have to strategize around next time in case something like that happens again. But you have a plan A, B, C, and you can never anticipate what's actually going to happen on the ground. But so happy to be here.
Listen, I get that. One thing, ladies and gentlemen, that you're going to understand is this career path builds character. Okay, tell you that. Now, with all that, what advice would you give someone trying to break into this space? Is there any advice or something that you would give somebody as far as like in advance or anything? If they're, because I heard you say at the Dow Jones, I would have never looked. Like, wait, what?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate that when I was at College Park at University of Maryland, I was very involved on campus. I worked a lot of cultural organizations and university organizations, and all of that, especially at the collegiate level, is event planning in essence. And that's where I really figured out that, oh, I really like this. I don't know what a path forward is going to be, but I know that I really enjoy ideating an experience and then seeing it come to life. So I would say that these days, with networking opportunities like Beyond the Ballroom, where you can hear from such experienced professionals like my colleagues here, you just are able to be more aware of the different career paths that are within the event industry, because there are so many that I just never would have even known about as a college kid. So I think it's just connecting with like-minded individuals who can, connect the dots where it makes sense.
I like that. And are there any like common misconceptions that people have about working in this realm or in even award shows and production or anything?
There are a million of those. I think when people get into the event world, it's really what they see on the outside. They've experienced an event. They think there's, well, common sense, I can do an event, right? Because a lot of event planning is common sense. Hey, I need enough room for ingress and egress, common sense. Though they don't realize you should go to the fire marshal to make sure what you think is what they think. And I think a lot of the misconceptions is the work that goes behind it is so intensive. It is so tied to legal aspects. There's so many layers to it that I don't know about the rest of my colleagues. Usually by the time the event starts, I already considered it almost over because all the hard planning has already happened. Now it's just hopefully everything executes the way it does. And if not, then to Jitter's point, BCDE rolls in. Of course, if it's a live production, that's a whole nother conversation. But I think a lot of misconceptions is the simplicity of it. And it's much more complicated. And anybody coming into the industry, I literally say, and I said it before, is learn every job. It's not that you're going to do all those jobs, but it's good to know that how a tech run a show goes. It's good to know that you need to get permits, and how do you get permits if you need to get permits, and how do you find out what permits you need to get, those type of things, because it makes you more valuable when it's time to execute event. If you're just pigeonholed and all you do is, I don't know, talent management, or you just work with securing the vendors, but you don't know which vendors to secure. So I think part of it is doing the research and learn all aspects of the event. Because for me, if I'm working with a client, they'll know like, oh my God, I didn't know I had to do all of these things. Yeah, and they all cost money too, by the way, client. So it helps them plan better the more that you know. So that's really most thing I says. It's much more than what you see. It's like an iceberg. They see what's on top, but really event productions, everything is under the bottom.
Yeah, and
100%.
much to that point, it's also building your network and knowing who you can turn to for these questions of the things that you don't know. None of us knew how to get a permit or do any of these things or how to ask for any of these things, but we built networks of people that were smarter than us so that we could turn to these people and say, hey, you've done this, what can I do? We've borrowed templates, we've done all the things to make ourselves also successful, and in turn helping each other, because this network is your basis. It's your mirror, who you reference, who you keep in your circle, who you continue to hire is all incredibly important to who you are as a producer, in any of these events. It speaks volumes to you and your team as to how you work within this world and use your network properly.
I would really add really quick, budgets to me, as you learn, is probably the most important part of your job. And I think having financial knowledge is really, really critical. Anyone can come up with a great idea. Oh yeah, we can hang elephants from a ceiling. It becomes practicality and cost. Is it cost prohibitive? And that, at the end of the day, if you're doing two different types of budgets, one where someone says, here's the money, go plan an event. And there's others where it's ground zero. You have to create the revenue stream and how many expenses to figure out what your profit margin is. So learning basic budgets is really, really critical, because that can make or break your event, or if you ever do it again.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Carmen. And on the brand side, being able to educate your internal stakeholders on what the budget pertains to. I felt like throughout my career, that was always a huge challenge because, like Carmen said, people think that events are so simple. And when you ask for appropriate budget that are assigned to these different event elements, you have to be able to speak to them and advocate for why they're important and what those priorities are. I've always found that to be a challenge with internal stakeholders who are not events people. So certainly think that that's a huge skill set to sharpen.
I
Yeah.
love that. And it's
I think,
crazy. It's so
yeah, everything that Carmen, Jen, and Jitter said, holds a lot of merit in how to approach an event and all the different tools that you need to be successful in it. Some of the things that we do on the back end, where if you don't see it on the front end as a guest, that's usually something that is the sign of a successful event too. So what was said earlier about how complicated and how layered and how how difficult the planning elements are, is something that is very important to the job, because the best way to kind of approach those complexities is to give yourself the time that you need to be successful in thinking about all of the different elements to produce a successful event. Because when you're actually on site and the event is actually happening, a lot of the times you're dealing with the things that you didn't plan for. You know, the evacuations, the guest services issues that have come up. And if you give yourself the bandwidth and the time that you need to be able to handle those, then you're more likely going to be successful in the position, and your event is more likely going to be successful as well too. So an important characteristic that I seem to find in every single event that I work on is just that ability to be adaptable, the adaptability that you need to be able to adjust to any situation. You can put in all the planning that you can on a certain event, but things don't always go as planned, and you can't control all these different elements such as the weather, but you can control your team, your response, how you react to things, and how you treat people. And that's a really big, important part of how you can be successful in this industry, in my opinion.
That is true. And with it all being live, there are so many different parts that you can't control. That's one of the biggest things about the difference between something being live versus just a regular event, that you can try to plan out as best as you can, but then you have live, then you have other people, and then you have different time slots and all this other good stuff. Can you all help me figure out like the different synergies between like live sporting or music festivals or word shows and things like that? Are there any similarities or anything there?
I can start because I've worked on a number of different events, as has everybody else on this panel. But each event is you want it to be unique. You know, you want your event to stand out. You want it to be something that people are excited about going because of its unique nature too. But in terms of what exists in terms of synergies between events, there's a lot of the same operational components, a lot of the same planning details that need to go in, that need to be thought of. And those carry over from event to event. You have to think about security plans, you have to think about waste management plans, you have to think about accessibility plans. And all of these different elements exist no matter what event you're doing. So in that sense, there's a lot of synergy between an award show, between a festival, between a corporate event. These are all the same details that exist. And if you spend time focusing on getting those details, then what it generally allows you to do is to focus on the stuff that's more fun. Like, how do you make this event unique? How do you spend time being creative on the different programs and elements that will make your event stand out? And if you have that foundation, that backbone of those operational components structured and in play, then generally your event does stand out.
Yeah, I'll just to piggyback, I hate that phrase, but I always use it. You know, there are differences in all these events, and when they're large scale, there's a lot of similarities. And to the point that was just brought up is that it's really about, right, the operations. It's like once you learn basic skills, right, production, the budgets, and knowing all these pieces, fundamentally you can move from different types of events. There is huge differences though when you're running, if you're doing a musical festival and it's just an audience, you can be off 5-10 minutes running a stage. That's one thing. When you're running broadcast or live, that's a little, you don't have that flexibility. So I believe in those scenarios, the details and the precision is much, much more important. But fundamentally, a lot of the events are the same in terms of, you said, the operations. What varies also is ones that are outside, and then you have raw spaces versus one on the inside where it's just, oh, you already have power? Great. I'm just going to run over here and grab an extra couple of generators. So there is huge differences between being an indoor structured event and then an outdoor event when you're building a completely raw space. I prefer to be on inside whenever, but I love the challenge that outdoor brings. I really say skills come into play when you literally are looking at a raw field and you've got to turn that into something that tens and thousands, 100 people are going to show up to. And you've got to do it in a safe manner. So there are baseline things, vendors, procedures, permits, escalation plans, and all those other things, and they are fundamental. But then there are significant differences. But when you have the foundation and some common sense, and as Jen said, you have resources and relationships, you make the calls to figure out the things that maybe you don't know, because it might be different in New York City than it is doing it in Kansas City. So you can't think that you know everything from event to event. So I think that's a part of it too. Is baseline is very important, but of how the foundation, but they are significantly different, and you can't discount the differences.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I'm in alignment with that. I also feel that I'm not sure what the experience levels are here in the room, but for anybody who's just getting into event planning, the foundation that Carmen and Fareed are referencing that are applicable to any type of event that you are producing or any event industry that you're exploring, I feel like it's just hyper organization, being really detail oriented, and really having grace under pressure. I think all four of us have mentioned, chaos ensuing on the ground and not being able to anticipate what's actually going to happen, regardless of how many contingency plans you have. So having a really strong sense of self in a moment where you need to have grace under pressure when others are looking to you for guidance is going to carry you through to success in any setting that you're in as an event planner. So just want to mention that again, as anybody who's looking to jump into the industry, that's certainly a characteristic that is will carry you far and is a really strong skill set to continue to sharpen.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much else to say. I could echo what everyone else has said here as far as, there's a lot of tough skin here that it takes a lot of endurance and resilience. And I feel like we've all pulled 24+ hour shifts at some point to make sure it gets over the finish line. The synergies that are within live events, whether it be indoor, outdoor, broadcast live, or otherwise, it takes a level of tenacity that is not available in everyone. You can lead teams, but being in those chaos and under those times of pressure, it really shines when you have a good manager, a good team, and you're a good leader, and you can not only take care of the event, but take care of the team. And I think that kind of brings everything home as far as how this all really, when you get down to brass tacks, how this really works.
And I was just thinking how you and Carmen are some very rare individuals who have actually done a plethora of different events, whether it was like live or anything corporate, or even within the live space. I know Carmen, she's done iconic work with Essence Festival as a producer of many different events. And then even Jenny, you had a very interesting shot into this entire thing. Can you both actually just kind of walk us through what shaped your perspective working in the industry, even from, I know you did some van life. Can you tell us about that? And I know that's one of those things no one ever thinks about, like, hey, I want to do festivals. Yeah, you're gonna live in a car.
I'll start. I never thought about doing festivals, to be very honest. They do seem overwhelming. Visiting them as I was younger, I was like, ooh, this seems like a lot. But what I will say is over time, as I picked up skill sets, the fear will step in for a lot of people when they say, hey, take on this big event. There's a level of fear, but if you have, like we talked about, those fundamental skills, you get there. And so for me, I would say anybody who's interested in doing these festivals, I literally will say it over and over again, start shadowing and learning the different aspects of it. I don't know from my colleagues here, but there's no way in the world I could have led an Essence Festival if I didn't know all the parts that I was leading. If I didn't know what it was like to have conversations with the CDC and the mayor or the fire department, like I follow those things from other events that I had done in the past, and I brought those to the table. If I don't know what vendors are actually doing, if I don't actually know those things, you really can't, it's very difficult to lead them. And you don't wake up in the morning leading a 500,000 attendee event. Everything takes time. And even when you get to that point, you still need a village to deliver it. No one can deliver anything by themselves, despite many companies only want to pay 2 people to do it. You really need a big army to deliver these events. And so my first thing is to say is broaden your skill set. And you can learn. You don't have to do everything. You can read about it. You can figure out what are all the different roles that are involved in doing it. And then across industries, because when you're working on events now, everybody sponsors events, from automotive, for healthcare, technology. And so you begin to understand what these industries like, because you have to build an experience that's attractive to these brands so they're able to deliver their messaging and reach the audiences they're trying to reach. So I happen to work across a lot of industries. And as if you can contract, you don't have to work full time. You can contract and work in automotive and medical and everything else to begin to learn, because all these events must be funded. All of these events must be funded. Someone has to write a check for them. If you're lucky to have a company who writes checks, that's one thing. But if you have a company where these things are built around sponsors, that's part to start to learn. So there's so many different aspects, and it's not to seem overwhelming to anyone who is on board. It shows you that I'm still on a learning curve. 30 years later, I'm still on a learning curve, because there are things that new events that are coming, technologies in the game now. So these large festivals, back in the day, you said put some screens up, great AV, people show up. That's not today. You better have some good, strong Wi-Fi connectivity for social media and streaming, and it could be live coming from the stages and all this on and so forth. So as technology evolves, there's a huge learning curve. And with AI coming into play and all these other aspects, there's never a point where you know everything. So I just say stay on a learning curve. There's a lot of moving parts to it. I'm sure Jen and Farah didn't start one day and it's like, I'm at the top of my game. Said no one in the very beginning. Hopefully not. And if you did, you're probably not in this business anymore.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's exactly true. I know for myself specifically, I started out at the very bottom because I wanted to be able to make sure I knew how to do everything. I think in festival world, I did everything but catering. Because I worked in restaurants for so long, I was like, well, that one, I don't need to I can take that one off the list. But it is a matter, you can't lead a team, as Carmen said, without knowing what you're leading. You don't know what you don't know, and that's okay. You have to start somewhere, and you have to start everywhere. And the more experience you can gain, and by being humble and asking questions and just I figured out where I wanted to be because I figured out where I didn't want to be first. And it took all of that to get me to a place where I'm very happy and comfortable and learning still every day in different events in different worlds. And it's wonderful, and but it was a long, hard road to get to here, but it was all a great experience. Great experience.
What
No, I love
Carmen and Jen have really pointed out is the importance of knowing all of the individual roles within an event, and that's difficult because there are so many different roles and so many different ways that you can approach it. And, you know, for like a music festival and working on an event like a Lollapalooza, there'll be 1,000 different people that work on a guest services plan, you know, from several hundred volunteers doing different engagement enhancement type operations to essential positions within information services, safety and security and whatnot. And to know how to do all of those different jobs is seemingly an impossible role, but it's also a very important thing to at least understand what those positions do so that you can get those people the right information on how they can proceed and how they can actually support the event. And to a point that Carmen made, that the values there of that position and of that role, because that's a very important thing. Like Carmen said, someone has to pay for this. So throughout this whole staffing plan, budgeting process, and so on, there's this understanding, what is this job doing? Is it important? Can it be done more efficiently? And so on. And then as someone working to be in the event profession, you're really never above any of those roles. You know, I started, my first job in events was signage, and I can't tell you how many signs I still put up on a day-to-day basis, how much bike fence I still move when I'm on site too. And that's not because of a lack of planning, because we didn't put, you know, the people in place to do that. That's because an attitude that tends to work really well within the event field is an all hands on deck. How can I contribute? And if you're in a leadership position and a volunteer or a crew member sees you participating and doing the same job that they're being asked to do, it really does well for morale and for the overall success of your entire staffing plan. So those are really great points. You know every job. If you don't know the specifics of how to do every single job, just at least understand what it is and what it takes to be successful in that position.
You know what? Something just dawned on me when I was first starting out. One of my biggest problems was I did not even know what jobs to look for. So very impromptu, but I know we're talking about let's do jobs, but I wonder from the top of your heads, what are some of the roles that you can think of that are in award shows, live events, and all of these? Like I know we talked about there are volunteers, there are producers, there are, you know, showrunners. What other roles are there? Just from the top of your heads, you could just shoot them out. Even people, if you know them in the chat, you can put a couple roles or whatever you're doing as well. Just for people that's probably trying to get into it and they don't know where to look.
I can start off, but I don't know. I'll kind of take a different approach if you're okay. One of the things that I found, like jumping into award shows on the production side from a staffing standpoint, was that there's a whole pre-planning phase, and then there's a whole different staffing plan that you need for on-site as well. And I think, you know, that's across the board with most events, because again, especially all of us who are in a live events, that you're going to find that in most of the types of experiences that we're producing. From an award show standpoint, there are just so many different spaces on site that need to be covered. You need a really, really solid on-site staffing plan with people who you can trust, because you're going to be all over the place, and you need an extension of your team or a proxy for you who's going to make calls at the same time that you're doing something totally different. So I think staffing is certainly a huge priority to get right and to have a really solid strategy in place. And it goes back to kind of being able to advocate for those roles to whoever is the keeper of the budget, right? And making sure that you're getting what you need, and being able to educate them on, like, okay, if we're cutting this role, then that means we're not going to be, we're exposed in this area. We're putting ourselves at risk for these three things. So just, again, having a really solid communication plan with your internal stakeholders to be able to speak to priorities from a budget standpoint, priorities from a staffing standpoint, so that nothing falls under the cracks. But I don't even know where to start with how many roles there are, because that's an overwhelming question for me. So I'll probably pass it to somebody who can speak to that better.
Well, I'll say yes, there are 192,000 million roles.
Okay.
Every single role is important. There's not important. It depends, I guess, if you're going bottom up, right? And I think I always found a great way is if you're looking to just start with events, there are so many agencies out there who literally just staff for events. And then when you get those jobs, you do above and beyond when you're there. You step over. So if your job has been just to, let's say, manage flow for seating, you say, what else can I do? I like to learn something else. You know, if someone's brought you on just to be a bar back to help the bartenders that are brought on board, then you start talking to the bartenders and you ask them what they do. I mean, that's how I started in the business. I literally went from passing out drink coupons to where I am today by saying, well, what do you do? Oh, I want to do what you're doing. Okay, maybe, oh, I don't want to do that. That sounds like, oh, you work too late. I don't want to do that job. But you begin to learn. But the staffing agency thing is a great place to start because they'll staff for anything and everything. Line control, talent movement, catering assistance, production setup, a runner for a stage. There are a million jobs that these staffing agencies, these event staffing agencies do, and they literally probably touch 70% of around the edges of anything. Enough for you to network, get telephone numbers, and connect, so then you can start finding out what you like, because that's also a way to figure out what avenue you want to go in. So you thought you wanted to work behind the stage, and you realize how chaotic it is. Maybe you don't want to work behind the stage because it's very intense. And there's a lot of accountability there. So I always say start with the event staffing because their new roles are coming on. I'm like, oh, that's a role? Okay, I used to think someone else did that. And you start adding to that. So that's where I would say start in this business. And even if you're in this business, you've got to shift and learn other roles because you will get pigeonholed, or someone will come around who can do your role and these other roles, and then you'll get bunched out because, to be very honest, regarding these budgets, the amount of staff you're able to hire over years have decreased. And so where you used to have 2,000 people that could help you, they'll say 2,000 are too many. We need somebody who can do both of those. We need somebody who can run the stage and help the tech person real live, because we can't afford to do it separately. So that's why Lily says is use these avenues, because knowing the world, we can explain every role. But there are event agencies that you can literally call them on the phone and say, this is what I'm trying to do. This is my type of experience. This is what I'm learning. And they will begin to staff you. And that's how you move up the ladder and learn more.
Yeah, I wanted to also touch on this one, just because our company does have a focus on staffing events. So one of the things that we've looked at from our company's standpoint in terms of how we look at a staffing plan and the different roles that are needed and existing that need to exist on an event, is we've taken a kind of a guest services approach to that as well too, meaning that we look at an event as different layers of guest. So we have our staff, we have media, we have sponsors, we have artists, athletes on sports events, and then we have our paying ticket guests. And each of those different guests that we look at has somebody servicing that guest. So you have artists and you have a department like artist relations, you have sponsors and you have a department like sponsor management, you have media and marketing, and all of these different departments that service their particular guests have roles within those departments to make an event go on. So it's a very broad speaking question, but it's a really good position to be in, because if you have this general event interest, there are so many different ways that you can go to explore that passion and to really find purpose in the event world. Now what Carmen was saying about you have to be a jack of all trades and you have to get more efficient. That holds true too. And that just adds to the challenge of how you might have to staff the event. And there's a lot of people that are interested in this field. So those jobs are very competitive. And, you know, when you start looking at something like the careers that Carmen, Jitter, and Jen have had, that those opportunities are even fewer and require even more experience too. So the event field isn't for everybody, but at the same time, it can be for everybody because there are a lot of different opportunities, but you have to kind of work to narrow your interest, you know, explore these different routes and whatnot that exist here, and find out what you're good at, what you enjoy, because that's generally going to help steer that passion for you to a place where you can actually turn it into a career. And then, you know, just to be very transparent about it, like it can be very difficult. I know, Damina, you mentioned something about van life. Like we have a bunch of people that we put in place that in order to make it work for them and in order for them to work from event to event, you know, they have to make some decisions about the lifestyle that they want and if they can actually live in a certain way that the event lifestyle supports. You know, we're talking about working long hours. We're talking about working weekends. We're talking about travel and all of these different things that have been a part of our careers that are very important considerations when you're thinking about the balance and the life that you want. But as far as opportunities go, I'd say there's a lot going out there. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach working in events.
Yeah, I think just to touch on the van life thing, to kind of bring that full circle, I did do a tour or two in my RV, which I still hold and have. And it was, as like Fareed was saying, you know, you're on the road, you've joined the circus, you are really in it. And when you're really in something, at the time, it made the most sense for me to just keep going and have my home be on wheels. So it is something, it's not, again, not for everyone, and it wasn't for long, but it was something that made these events more accessible to me because I was available. I had a place to stay. It was easier to get from place to place and kind of make this logistical puzzle work out. So just touching on that, again, it's not for everyone. It's not like a full-time life situation, I wouldn't suggest, but for a season or for, you know, like it's basically like being on tour.
That's a good way to put it. I'm on tour. Next time somebody asks me what you're doing, I'm on tour. Don't worry about it. But no, I love that. And honestly, everyone, there are so many different things now. I know back in the day, it's just you know, just look at the little newspaper and things like that. But no, there are so much more out here. And a lot of places don't just use LinkedIn. They also use Facebook. There are Facebook groups that I'm even learning about. Can also Barnstorm right here. Barnstorm, Live Nation, C3, you know, and it doesn't have to, like Carmen said, you do not need a full-time position. You can also do a lot of contract work. We need freelancers, volunteering. There are ways to do it. Dip a toe. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you can get out of there and try something else. But at the end of the day, a lot of these things can test your skills, and if it's okay, we're all just living and walking this world, and even all of these lovely folks here, even high on the ranks, they've all even had times where some did not go as planned, and they still got through it, you know. So might as well. Can you all tell us a time where something didn't go as planned or it tested your skills? Okay. And is there a skill that just got you through that high stake moment where other people were like, look, I can't do it, but was there something or a mantra or something in your head that got you and your team through that moment?
I'll start off. There's one when I knew this question was coming. Something that tested my calmness, because I think that to me is, I think has been said multiple times, is in the moment, staying calm is so critical. My first year at Essence Festival, my job was only on the beauty, though it was the most coveted portion of Essence Festival. So it would take in 100, 200,000 people for that one footprint. And I knew and I heard it was very popular, but I didn't get it until the doors opened up. And when the doors opened the convention center, I didn't realize there were already thousands of people outside, and they run inside to get into line. Because there's a subsequent, once you get inside, there's another line to control the capacity in that part of the footprint. It got to the point where, as they were rushing in for that year, it was decided they would switch to register. You had to register to get into that part of the footprint. What was not taken into account were there was a lot of risk-averse individuals that had been coming to this festival for years and they never had to do it before. And there are a lot of different age groups. And so there are people who just didn't want chains and other technology. And what that resulted in was a very rowdy, pushy, I mean, it was like a concert amount of people pushing and shoving, and because they would give out full size hundreds of dollars worth of products on the inside. It got to the point I had to shut the line down. Now I could have sent security, right? Because that would be the default, right? You have a rowdy crowd, people pushing, people falling down, you call security. But said, you know what? I'm not taking that route. I grabbed a bullhorn and I proceeded to appeal to their conscience of why they were at Essence Festival, the purpose of why everybody was there, the culture and everything that this event and the brand represented. And I had a little speech to everyone. And I said, look to your right, look to your left. This is your sisters, your brothers, humanity. And the line calmed down. That is the first time where I made a choice, despite all the things that are moving parts in that portion of the event, with 13, 25 sponsors, all with 20, 30, 40 by 50 footprints. That was cooler heads prevailed. And I think that was a big learning curve for me, because often it's called security, it's their problem. But I had to realize that your event, these are people. They're not just commodities where they're just coming through the door. And I, at that point, said, I have two choices. I can calm them, or I can rile them up and make it worse. So I think that was probably one of my biggest learning curves, because I realized that moment, it's bigger than the event. And I think once you begin to realize that people are coming for an experience, and it's going through the motions for you, but it's an experience for them. And that was a huge thing for me. And I was really worried it wasn't going to work, but it worked. So that was probably a big learning curve for me. And that was something I learned much further into my career.
Yeah, I can jump in. This is less of a, it wasn't a very glamorous event. This was at one of my former corporate companies that I was working for. And we were planning an internal conference retreat of sorts for about 250 people. We had, I was running the team at the time. This is at Univision. And I was running a team of maybe 8 event planners, and we had been planning for weeks, probably a couple months at that point, and the event was happening the next day. And I got a call from our head of sales, who was our executive internal client at the time, our internal stakeholder. And he calls me on the phone. He's like, Jitter, I know we're planned for tomorrow, but the space, I just heard from facilities, the AC is not working. It's supposed to be really, really hot tomorrow, and I don't think we can do it here. So give me a proposal for what your plan is and how we're going to pivot. And I remember being, it was pretty early in my leadership phase of my career, and I felt immense pressure to deliver. we had less than 12 hours to figure out what we were going to do. And I'll kind of echo something that my colleagues today have shared, but I really, really leaned into my partners, my external partners, to help me be successful in that moment. There's certainly grace under pressure that, you know, Carmen spoke to, and trying to maintain a level head and just figure out, okay, what are the solutions that what are the levers I can pull here? And for me, being on the internal brand side, it's really focusing on the partners that I've cultivated and curated throughout my career. So I reached out to the owner of AES here in New York. He owns Center 4 and 5, and they happened to be empty the next day and happened to be able to host us at an extremely reasonable free 99 cost to us, which was insane. I called my AV partners and asked if they could lend us some speakers and some microphones for the day, and they, you know, ponied up and were there on site with us, just based on projects that we had done with them before. And I made, you know, every effort. I'm going to have you in for my absolute next project that I have, maybe even for our upfront. You know, I had a caterer come in and deliver food for us. So all of this took place, and I can't take credit for everything because I had my team working on all of this at 7 o'clock at night, and by 10:30 that evening, we were ready to go, and we were able to send out communications to the team to pivot location and to arrive at 9 a.m. the next day. And when I tell you that that was probably the proudest moment of my career up until I told you know, I've done the Golden Globes at this point, I've done the AMAs, but that internal conference that we had to pivot within hours for is still one of the proudest moments of my career, because it speaks to the partners that I have and the relationships that I've cultivated and the trust that I've been able to maintain. And every success that I had in that moment was because of my partners. And you know, I hear Carmen and Jen and Fareed speak to this from a completely different perspective, right? Like, I'm calling agencies to help me out of a pickle. So I think that having the mentality that your relationships, you know, the established relationships that you have with people who know more than you do in an area are so important, and being able to validate them and affirm them, and also advocate for them when I need to from a budgetary standpoint is so important as a brand side planner. Because again, I don't have expertise in every single area, but I also recognize what the needs are and who the right people to bring on are, who are smarter than me and can help the brand elevate. So that was a huge learning for me. And I like to tell that story because I think it shows that regardless of the type of event you're doing and who the audience is for, we're all just wanting a successful event and a really, really smooth experience. And it's the people who are, you know, if you treat the CEO the same way you treat the people who take out the trash, the bussers, the people at the FedEx mailbox, or excuse me, mail room, like those are the people who are going to give you success and help you in a pickle, not the ones who are saying yes to the numbers, right? So I think that's just something to consider. Rambled a little bit, but Jen, over to you.
I have so many stories, and I'm honestly, they would just keep unfolding. But I think much to your point, you know, it's like we're anticipating needs. We're in the business of anticipating needs, whether it be client, vendor, team, you know, we are in a position that when these chaoses happen, we are able to pivot on a dime and make decisions that wouldn't necessarily be available to us if we hadn't had these teams and these people believing in us, and also believing in ourselves to know that we are going to figure this out. All of us in this room are solutions based. It's why we do this. We're always looking for a solution to make something better. You know, it's not even just fix a problem. It's like, how can we elevate this? How can we make it better? How can we make this experience better? So there's a ton of stories we could write books about, you know, all the things that the good and the bad that have happened. But at the end of the day, we're all still here and we're all still doing it because we overcame these things that really seemed like the end of the world at the moment. And then we figured it out and the show went on. I'm sure every single person, Fareed, I know that's a different story for you. The show did not go on, and my heart and soul are with you guys on that. That Bonnaroo not happening was another terrible blow, but the show goes on in some capacity, you know, like you guys will pick back up, things will continue going, and it's the tenacity of all of us that make that happen.
Yeah, so what do you do when things don't go as planned is kind of a funny question for planners, you know, which we all are or aspiring to be. And you know, the most of what I've experienced, you know, especially recently around things not going as planned, are around weather events, which I say it's a funny kind of question because now we spend so much time on weather preparedness, emergency action plans, evacuation plans, meeting protocols, and how we communicate things. Carmen said this at the very beginning of this question, of responding to this question, was like being the calm in the chaos. You know, that's a very important skill, but not one that you can just learn. It's learned through experience. And something that I saw in the comments that you know Jitter reinforced is the relationship part of this. You know, working with your network, working with your teams, really focusing on the things that you can control when things don't go as planned, even though we're planners and, you know, putting in place all these different elements to adapt. But it's ultimately, you know, the communication, the way that you interact with your team, with the guest on site, and the learnings that you take away from those experiences that allow you to turn something like an event cancellation into something that could be potentially better in the future, as you move about your business and planning the next one, the better one, how you deal with that situation. So, you know, I try to take the things that don't work well for us as learning experiences and how we can improve things in the future. And generally, the people that we work with are using that same mentality. And the next event is generally better. It takes into place a lot of those, you know, considerations and learnings. And I think that's an important thing. The experience that you get through working through those, it's not just the wins as an event producer. It's not just the headliners, the good stuff. You know, it is commonly, you know, the things that don't work out exactly how you plan them to be. And those are usually the learning experiences that you get the most out of.
I love that. Thank you all. And really quick, last question, because you know burnout is real, especially in this climate. What is one thing that helps you stay personally fulfilled in this field, in this realm of events, or any piece of advice that maybe a mantra or something that someone can take with them to keep them going? No, Jenny, you have to jump.
Yeah, I can start real quick. The thing that I think has helped me the most in my career, especially in the later half of my career when I held leadership positions, is just to not take anything personally, especially in the most stressful job that there is at event planning. There are a lot of high emotions in what we do, and we're in a lot of stressful situations. So the more that you can understand that, more likely than not, what you're receiving from somebody else is not a because of you as a person, and don't take that home because it's unnecessary stress that you're adding to your own life. And it's really freeing and liberating once you kind of understand that. I felt that it's helped me to really compartmentalize my work life from my personal life, and allow me a longer runway for staying in this career, I think. Because early on, I don't think I knew that, and I felt like I was burnt out really early in my 20s being in this industry. And that's something that's really, really helped me.
I'll jump in. I'd say for me is being kind to everyone that I work with. Over the years, like I love showing up at events I've done in years, and everyone from the maintenance staff to the tech team, everybody, there's a camaraderie and friendship. Everybody's working hard. And so I make sure that, you know, everybody I work with, when I leave, I like to know that people say, we miss you, or you did such, we really appreciate. I don't want to be the person that people only are working for me because they're getting a paycheck. I want them to work with me because they love that we are working together and we all working as a team, because that's how I get the best out of myself as well as others. Because when you start to belittle people or deflect issues, you'll never get them solved. And then those relationships you thought you were building were great, they don't ever want to speak to you again. So even if they're people that get on your last nerve, they're people. And that's what's got me through, is that when I've been down, the village of people that I've been kind to return that kindness and help me move forward, because I can't do it by myself. So I would say minimize the amount of bridges you burn. You're going to burn some bridges because that's just the nature of the beast. That's why you change vendors. But try to maintain those relationships in a kind way. So like I said, they don't feel forced. They want to work with you.
Yeah, I would say what I take with me is that this is all temporary. None of these events are forever. You might be in the shit of it, and the next day, you're on a plane out of there. And it's all very fleeting. It's all I take with me to be as present as I can when I'm in the event, but also to have fun with it, to really just I always put it on a team member or assign a team member, what's our one fun thing today? And it can be anything, it can be anything, but it just has to be fun. And you have to break up the monotony, and it's part of that mantra of just keep going. You have to keep going, but you have to make it worth it for yourself and everybody. Otherwise you'd never do it again. So.
Yeah, these are all great tips. Don't take things personally, be kind, remember that what we're doing is ultimately we're throwing parties for people. Like the weight of our actions isn't that huge, but at the same time, these can be life-changing experiences for people. And obviously the safety and security of your attendees is the most important thing that you're going to need to take into consideration as an event planner. What I would say is that the balance for every single person is going to be different. So as an event professional or an aspiring event professional, find out what that balance is that you need in order to be in this industry, if it's something that you are really serious about. And that balance is going to look different for every single person. For me, when I was young and in this industry, I got a lot of energy from traveling, from, staying up late and being very social. And now, I need a lot of time at home. I need a lot of time to rest. When I go on site, I'm just emotionally drained. And it's different now for me, and it's going to be different for every single person. And that's okay. And just thinking about what you need in the moment and what you need, and making sure that you're always checking in with yourself, and that you're finding purpose in the work that you're doing. Because once you lose that purpose is when this career starts to become unfulfilling. So make sure that when you're working on these different events, that you're always finding meaning in the work that you're doing, and that you're always balancing that out with the things that you need as an individual, as a person in your personal life as well.
Yes. Can we get a little snap for the panelists? Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for giving us all those tips and tricks. Honestly, they definitely helped me for sure. Because I am definitely one of those people that I do this because I love the outcome. I love, you know, the moment when all of this good old chaos, and then it's that one moment at the end where it all comes together and everyone's just it's all joyous before you have to rip it all down again. That's the moment that I live for personally. So I genuinely love that. And when you're working with a great team, it just makes all the difference. So thank you all.